So we're here today near the Sabre Analytics Convention in Arizona with Steve Gardner, fantasy editor at USA Today. They just had their labor draft, which is an annual thing. And I want to talk to Steve about his growing up, if he played any baseball board games or simulations that he wants to tell us about.
Well, I was a big football fan in terms of gameplay when I was a kid. So I played a lot of NFL strategy football, if you've heard of that. And I basically just played dice baseball. I didn't do any simulations, and just a dice game. And I would recreate Baltimore Orioles seasons, and I would make out batting orders, and I could play a game in maybe 10 minutes or something like that.
So this was a game that you invented?
So it's sort of, 1-1 is a single, and 2-2 is a double, and 6-6 is a home run.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't think I invented it, but a friend of mine told me how to play.
Okay,
and so that was my baseball growing up.
Okay.
And I would play, because it was easy to play games very quickly, I would play 162 game Orioles seasons and would see how it compares to how the team did. We always somehow won the World Series, my Orioles team. I don't know how that worked, but nevertheless.
Well, now you've advanced.
Yes.
And you have been in our Sunday Night Baseball Draft League for quite some time. You're definitely one of the veteran owners.
Yep.
So just tell us about your experience of being in the league, and just tell us about your experience of being in the league.
It's an honor to be in the league, being the original Dynasty Baseball League collection of participants. So that in itself is very prestigious. The game has made me appreciate the real game of baseball much more than I would have otherwise, because it forces you to think ahead, several steps ahead. And when you're watching a game on TV, you're just watching to see what happens. And you're not necessarily thinking, maybe sometimes you will, if you're a real hardcore baseball fan, but you're not thinking 2 and 3 steps in advance like managers have to do. And this has given me that kind of insight. I think it's helped make me a better writer, and it makes me better able to understand what's going on, makes me able to answer or ask better questions to the managers and the players about what they're thinking, what their strategy is, and things along those lines. So being part of the SNBL and knowing a lot of the players a lot more in depth than I would helps me a lot, and plus it's just so much fun to play these games head to head and be thinking along with the other manager and being able to use your baseball knowledge and your theories about the game, about lineup construction, about managing bullpens, starting rotations, giving players rest. It just gives you a greater and deeper understanding of the game. And when I'm playing with the folks in the SNBL, they're all very, very good. And them being as good as they are, I think, helps me strive to be better than I have been and keep improving.
Yeah, and it's one thing, because you're in a lot of fantasy leagues. I think at one point you said you were in 13 fantasy leagues. It's one thing to participate in the draft, right? It's a whole nother thing to then take those players and manage them on the field. That's like a whole nother deal that you get to do, right?
Absolutely. And the fact that the drafts, if you're doing a fantasy draft or a fantasy auction, and Dynasty League Baseball draft or auction, those are fairly similar. And I feel like my experience doing fantasy baseball helps me with that part. But then, obviously, you have zero control of your fantasy team. You can put those guys in the lineup and, or trade or do whatever, but once you have them down on your lineup for that particular week or whatever the scoring period is. You just have to watch and see what happens. It's fun then to take that team that you've assembled and put it together in Dynasty League Baseball and then watch it perform. That to me makes it, on a completely different level. And the experience of playing those games and having not only your ability to put a team together contribute to a win, but also your ability to manage those players in the game contribute to a win. There are many ways to be successful.
Right. And you mentioned that there's similarities with fantasy and simulation, but there's also some, in terms of drafting, there's also some pretty big differences, because when you draft, you've got to put these players in a batting order. You've got to construct a bullpen. You have to think about platooning, right, in terms of lefty-righty. So maybe you can just touch on that. I touched on some of it, but
yeah, no, in fantasy baseball, all you're worried about are the scoring categories. Offensively, you worry about how many steals this guy is going to get, or home runs he's going to hit, or pitchers, how many strikeouts they're going to get. In Dynasty League Baseball, when you're playing these games, there's so much more that can help you be successful and help you win. A pitcher that doesn't get a whole lot of strikeouts and would not be as valuable in fantasy baseball, but gets lots of ground balls and can limit contact by the opposing hitters, becomes much more valuable. So to be able to take, a speedy guy will get you a lot of stolen bases, but can he also help you defensively with your simulation team? That is a huge, defense not accounted for in fantasy baseball at all.
Huge difference.
But it's a big part of the team that you assemble, when you're playing simulation games.
So like I've got Patrick Bailey, Gold Glover on my team.
Who hits 212 or something.
Yeah, in fantasy doesn't have that much value, right? But in Dynasty League Baseball, very valuable with his defense in terms of not only his throwing arm, but his ability to handle pitchers, prevent pass balls, his range just on slow tappers in front of the plate, things like that. So those are all valuable things that are little nuances, right,
Sure.
that you experience while playing the game.
And it goes that way with pitchers in their ability to hold base runners, keep them from getting good jumps, outfielders with really good arms that keep opponents from taking the extra bases. Those are the things that are really valuable in Dynasty League Baseball that you don't have as a factor at all that you consider in fantasy.
And in real baseball, so it's mimicking real baseball because that's what real GMs have to think about, right?
Absolutely.
So anything else you want to add just about your reviews or of Dynasty League Baseball powered by Pursue the Pennant? What you want to add on at the end here?
The only thing that I will say is that it seems like sometimes I feel like I have a team that has to win. It should definitely win because I've done everything right. And a lot of times, in fantasy baseball, if you get the right players and they stay healthy, you're gonna win if you have the best team. That doesn't necessarily happen when you have to play the games out. And you could win 90% of the time, but in a 5-game series or a 7-game series, all of that hard work comes down to can you execute in that one particular playoff series. And that's where it's hard to accept when you don't get it done and you feel like you've done everything right. That's certainly like the real thing. That is probably the one thing that makes it the most like the real game of baseball, is that you can do everything right and the breaks don't go your way, and you have to live with it. And so I've had some near misses many times, but that makes the victories even more sweeter.
And you do have the one SNBL championship where you beat me.
I do remember
in the
that.
World
Yes,
Series.
I wasn't going to bring that up. I wasn't going to hold that over your head. But
Yes.
I do recall that my team that year did take care to the woodshed.
Yes, exactly. Well, thanks for the interview, Steve, and always great talking with you, and I know you really enjoy the game.
Thank you, and thank you for your game.
Okay, great.